Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Great Leadership. My guest today, Tommy Mello. He's the founder of A1 Garage Doors, a $200 million home service business company. He's also the author of several books and host and creator of the Home Service Expert podcast. Tommy, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Jake. A pleasure to be here.
You know, I was actually looking at your website fairly recently, and I noticed that you don't have anything in California yet. What's going on with that?
Because
I needed my garage doors serviced fairly recently, and I'm like, I wonder if Tommy's company's over here. And I went on there, and I was like, no, California.
California, there's a lot of states we're not in yet, but California, they make it very difficult to have a business there. There's more prosecutor attorneys. So if your employee sues you for $1, the lawyers get the $100,000. And it's like every company I talk to, one of my good buddies is getting sued for $20 million there.
Wow.
And he's a really, really good owner. He takes care of his people. And it's like if they see that you make money, they want to get you. Yeah. But I think California is the most beautiful state. It's a wonderful state. I do like California.
We have plenty of our own problems here. So I don't disagree with anything that you're saying about the regulations. It's definitely true. Well, why don't we start with a little bit of background information about you and just how you built the company, how many employees you guys have, and then we'll dive into some of the lessons that you learned and how people might be able to apply some of the things that you've done inside their companies.
Yeah. I born and raised in Michigan, a suburb of Detroit. Parents got a divorce when I was 7. Mom worked 3 jobs. And I just learned to work hard at a young age. And in 7th grade, I was like, I found out what is the highest career you could make? And it was orthodontist. So throughout my whole school, I was going to be an orthodontist. I took all the pre-dental classes in college, anatomy, physiology, organic chemistry, biochemistry. And right before I was about to take the DAT, I interned with a dentist, and he's like, you don't want this job. He's like, I'm 47. I still have $300,000 of debt. How much do you know about business? I said, probably not enough. He goes, go take the GMAT instead of the DAT. Learn business. If you still want to be a dentist, you'd be twice as effective. Well, throughout this time, I had a garage door business and started out in 2007. And I made every mistake in the book. I was one of those guys where I was going to do it all. Like, don't worry, I'll handle it. Fires, I'll handle it. Didn't really understand how much a team meant. And man, I made every mistake. Murphy's Law hit me over and over. 2010, I had my parents, my mom and stepdad move out, and they started helping me because I trusted them. At that point, I just needed trust. And 2014, hired a great guy, a right-hand man. I told him when he got hired, you got to be the bad cop because I don't fire people. I don't have very confrontational conversations. I'm a little bit different now. Still don't fire anybody. But he's like, I could be a bad cop. And we did well together. Tommy and Adam did a lot. 2017, met the best mentor I've ever had, the 7-Power Contractor. It's a book, Al Levy. He came on my podcast, and he taught me about systems, standard operating procedures, checklists, having an org chart, how to delegate properly, how to form a really he said, Tommy, you're the best firefighter I've ever met. We're doing 17 million at the time. And he goes, but you contain all the information. You have not led well, and you've not given these people a chance to succeed. They don't even know what they're supposed to do. Yeah. So we sat there for months and months, and it became years, and built manuals and standard operating procedures. We changed the way the office was set up. And he said I was his best student, but without him, he said, your business is going to become very vanilla. There's not going to be all the problems that you have to solve, and you're one of the best firefighters. So met him, got on the right CRM, started hiring the right people in the leadership roles. And I used to be all about revenue. I'd puff my chest out and walk in a room and be like, how much revenue are you doing? And then I learned this phrase, revenue is for vanity and profit is for sanity. And we started getting focused on the bottom line instead of the top line. And, as much money as we're doing this year and as proud as I am, I'm more proud of the fact we're 25% of the bottom line. We've got a new homeowner every week. Kids are coming into this world with a better life to change the bloodline, the generation. These are blue-collar people for the most part. And I wrote a book called Elevate. It's right behind me right here. build a business where everybody wins. I don't consider them employees. I consider them coworkers. And when they're winning, the whole premise of the book is build a dream so big that every single person that works with you, their dream comes true within your dream. So we created pay for performance. We've created an equity incentive program. I sold half the company at the end of 2022. 25 people, I gave away $100 million to 25 of the people. And this is pre-private equity or anything. It's never, I don't know anybody that's done it. And I ended up giving, I think I gave away another $2 million. Everybody got like a $3,000 to $5,000 bonus. Some of the people that didn't even work with me anymore, I sent them 20 grand that were a part of the come up. And then the next deal, we should have 100 people receiving lots of money. And now I give equity all the way down to the technician level. And that solves a lot of problems. But, I pride myself on all the mistakes because I made them and I don't make the same mistake twice. And I get mentoring and coaching all the time. There's not a time that you'll find me without 5 coaches. Wow. So it's a cool story. It's overnight success of 2 decades. And
how many employees do you have now?
We're just shy of 800.
Oh, wow. 800. Jeez. See massive growth. I'm curious about some of those mistakes that you made. And then I also wanted to ask you about this idea of working hard and fairness. And what your thoughts are on that. But let's start with some of the mistakes, because you mentioned you made all sorts of mistakes. I find that a lot of leaders inside of organizations, especially new leaders, make a lot of mistakes too. So as a new leader, what were some of the things that you were doing wrong that maybe you see other leaders doing wrong that they can fix?
Well, number one, I thought people only wanted money. I thought that's why people worked, for money. Then I realized they like appreciation. There's a good book called Five Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. Some people like to get acknowledged. Some of my coworkers never grew up with a dad, never were told they're good enough, never got told you're proud of that person. So I used to treat everybody in a way like a number, like a cog at some points. Number 2 is I was really into growth. I didn't care if we grew. I didn't care if we were profitable as long as we were growing. I didn't know how to find talent. I didn't know how to curate talent. I had to close down 4 markets. I've been lied to. I've had the police show up. I've had trucks flip over. I've had guys die, luckily not on the job, close friends of mine. I lived in an apartment complex that I owned for 4 years with the technicians that were training. But one of the things I always did right was I figured out leaders eat last. I drove a used truck, a Nissan Titan, salvage title with 180,000 miles on it. I said every single technician and installer is going to get a new truck before I do. And if I got to make them live in these apartments while they're getting trained, I'm going to live in these apartments. Hiring family is a difficult thing. It worked out for me, but I'd advised strongly to make sure there's almost like a prenuptial agreement that if you got to have a separation, you can still face each other at the Thanksgiving table, and family comes before business. Yeah. Father and sons never talk again. Cousins never look at each other. Like, it's just not the right way. Money could destroy relationships. And there's hundreds of stories I could tell you of devastation and struggle, but that's a good start.
Do you want to hear something really crazy? 96% of the people who watch videos on this channel are not subscribed. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. It'll literally take you 1 second, and you'll get notified when more videos just like this one are available. Now, let's get back to the content. Yeah, no, that's it seems like you had everything and anything that could happen actually happen. I'm curious what you think about the idea of working hard today. This comes up in a lot of podcast interviews, and I guess one of the reasons why it comes up is not all leaders believe that, this newer generation, they don't want to work as hard, or maybe we're scared to talk about hard work inside of our organizations because we're so obsessed with things like well-being and how you're doing and how you're feeling, that especially during the pandemic and post-pandemic, some leaders are scared to talk about hard work and sacrifice and going above and beyond. And then there's also this idea of fairness. I was on a podcast for Harvard Business Review fairly recently, and their host was asking me about fairness. And this is also a tough one too, because it seems like fairness doesn't exist. I mean, I guess it's okay to strive for the idea of fairness, but life is not fair and work is not fair. And part of it
I'm
is,
not a so.
huh?
I said I'm not a socialist.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? Because there's a big obsession inside of organizations today of making everything fair, of making everything equitable. And it's kind of like that. That's not the reality that we live and work in. So speak to me about your experience and your belief with the idea of hard work and then also fairness and what role those play. And do we still have the work ethic that we used to have years ago?
So 0 tenure, 100% meritocracy at this company. You can start tomorrow and still earn a position above someone else. Hard work and discipline. And when you start out working with me, I want to understand your goals, your dreams, your why. And sometimes I got to peel the onion back.
Okay.
But it's sometimes very, very deep. We're going to write those things down. And I got to look into your eyes and understand why you're here and what your dreams are. And I'm forcing you to dream bigger. I don't want you to have a house. I want you to have 5 houses. And I'm not kidding. I want my people to win in the biggest way possible. But they got to want it. This little bracelet says aspire to be number 1. I'm competitive. I'm a big sports fan. You know, I don't let everybody, you know who plays in the game? Wayne Gretzky played in the game because he worked harder and because he earned the right to. Michael Jordan earned the right. Tiger Woods deserves to play in the Masters. So first of all, you got to look me in the eyes and tell me you got a dream. And if not, I got to help you dream again because sometimes we forget to do that. And then we're going to figure out what would have to happen for KPI driven. What would your conversion rate, average ticket, your call booking rate, whatever position you're in, what would it take for you to earn? Because I believe in performance pay. And I'll show you what needs to happen to get here. I'll train you. I will give you every tool possible. I'll give you 2 months of training. We train every week. We have morning mojo calls every day. Free ride-alongs. You come back to Phoenix whenever you want to train. We're in 20 states and 40 markets. So the thing is you got to want it bad enough, but I never put you on a performance improvement plan. I talked to you and I said, Jacob, you remember you told me about these dreams? You said your dad was not feeling well and you wanted to take him on a fishing trip because you don't know how much longer you had. You told me it was going to cost $15,000. And right now I know where you're at. We've shared that. I mean, how bad do you want this? Because I think I want it more than you. And if I remind you what your why is that you created in your dream, it's a lot different. It changes everything.
Yeah.
And then I feel like people actually feel like you're caring. You're reminding them. You're holding them accountable to their own dreams. But it's got to be the right dreams. It can't be I want to do. Can't be vague. It can't be. It's got to be a SMART goal, right? Specific, manageable, attainable, realistic on a timeline. It can't just be I want to be healthy. I want to buy a house one day. Tell me the house you want to buy. Is it a 3-bedroom? Does it have a pool? Is it a 2-car garage? What street is it on? I want to get down to the details. Yeah. And when I have that, and I can reverse engineer what they have to do at work, it's very easy to get the best out of people. And they work very, very hard.
So then what do you say to some leaders out there who say, well, you know, I try to get my employees to work hard, but they say, oh, you know, I'm at my max, or, you know, you don't care about my well-being, or I want work-life balance. I don't want to show up to the office. Because there are some employees, to your point, who will go above and beyond. They're willing to sacrifice, they're willing to work hard. But also in the corporate world, there's this big obsession with things like work-life balance, with well-being, with burnout, with loneliness. And we're focusing a lot on that inside of organizations to the point where sometimes it goes against the idea of working hard. Where, you know, if a leader tells their employee, yeah, I know you're only working 36 hours this week, but, you know, maybe next week you might need to put in 50. Maybe you will need to make a sacrifice or stay late or come in early. How do you convey that message to people? And what do you see kind of in the business world there around people who get upset by that message of working hard?
Well, I don't embrace problems. I embrace solutions. I don't embrace victims. If you work for me, you won't be here long because you either get micromanaged out or you'll quit. And I'm not a corporation, so I don't hire people. I recruit them. If you don't look me in the eyes when you start here, I made a mistake if you came on and you didn't want to work hard. Because if you're not willing to work for your dreams, either am I. So if it was a large corporation and I had to deal with diversity and equity and all this stuff, like I'll hire you if you're black, white, Cuban, or Asian, gay, straight, old, or young. but I got to see drive. No racism here, no prejudice. You come in, you got your pants pulled up, you got a smile on your face, and you're willing to work hard. I'm not judging you ever. But if you judge yourself and you don't think you're worth it and you got every excuse of why you're not going to make it, then I can't help you.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about health, getting your mind right, going on long walks. Like when you get happy, when you look in the mirror, you walk differently. We talk a lot about health, eating right, just a little bit of fitness. You don't have to have a six-pack. But if you can't be happy with yourself, you become toxic with the people around you. And it's not fair to everybody else to keep those people around because it's a poison pill, and nobody wants to be around that. And this whole idea that I need to hire somebody because of their color or because of their age or their race or their, because of their sexual preferences, I'm sorry. I hire people and I don't even look at that. I don't even want to know what that is. I don't look at you any differently, but I want you to respect yourself.
So you mentioned this, so I'll bring it up, and it's the kind of the DEI stuff, because there's a lot of backlash in the space around this, and I interview a lot of business leaders on this podcast, and DEI comes up all the time. And I guess there's a difference between the idea of DEI versus kind of the reality of what organizations are doing or pushing. How do you think about DEI? Is it something that comes up? Do you see value in it? Like where do you position yourself as a CEO of almost 1,000 employees now? Do those conversations come up with your people?
No, not really. I mean, the best example I could think of, and this isn't, I want to be very careful here, but I think there's a way of putting people so I feel like Native Americans have it very tough. We came into this country, this was theirs, but what happens is it becomes a welfare state when you give people stuff and it's not earned and it's just expected. The people I talk to, like Morgan Freeman, and I don't know him very well, but there's different actors and different people that have talked about this, is everybody's got a chance. When you're expected to be given something not earned, it's very, very tough.
Yeah.
And I know what I would want. I'm telling you what, if I had a daughter that was 7 years old and she was in a burning building, I want the best firefighter. I don't care who it is. I want the most equipped person to be able to do that. I do not want prerequisites that need to qualify. I just want the person that can do the job the best. So then on the other side of that is there are companies that, like, it exists for a reason because they do get discriminated against. And I understand that, especially in certain businesses, in certain areas. We can talk about male-female, for example. Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot.
Yeah.
Is, men spend the most time in prisons. They do the most outdoor jobs. They move the most dangerous jobs. Their lifespan is lower. But I don't let that come in because I don't ever have a thought about that. Like, I don't even let it come into my mind. I think it's social media. It's the mainstream media. And I've never been accused of any of that. And the more you talk about it, the more you start thinking about it, the more you start I just don't look at people like that. I don't care if you're a male or female. Like, can you do the job? I love hiring women technicians, but I'm not going to hire them because they're a woman. I'm hiring them because I feel like they could do a great job for our clients and they could win at this job.
Yeah. Meritocracy.
100%.
Which, makes sense completely. So it seems like you're kind of on that same, so that's kind of the work hard mentality. Do you have any advice for leaders out there who are, I don't know, let's say you're at an IBM or a Pepsi or one of those organizations, and you're trying to push that work hard message, and you're getting pushback from your employees around, I'm getting burned out, I'm feeling lonely, I can't do anymore, I'm going above and beyond. How should leaders have that conversation? Because that seems to be a huge challenge, right? The well-being, the loneliness, the burnout, these are all the studies that keep coming out are like employees are disengaged, they're burned out, they don't trust their managers, and managers want their employees to be more accountable, to work harder, to step up, to go above and beyond. And there's this clash that's happening. How do you have those conversations with your people? Is it just kind of a tough love? You're not willing to do it. This place isn't for you.
In a corporation, I feel like the value system and the monetary expectations are disaligned. You got people that are trying to hit a quota to make bonus. You've got other people that are going after their yearly bonus. You've got other people that don't even know what a bonus is, the hourly workers. So it's disincentivized along the food chain. And if everybody was working towards the same goal and swimming hard in the same direction, it would change things. So I always start with the first question of what's in it for them? What's in it for them? Why would they work harder? Why is it important to their family? Why should they go above and beyond? For a recognition and a free lunch or a pin that they just won number one again?
Yep.
Or what's important to them? And sometimes a lot of people don't understand is you may have an employee that's a hard runner. They run in marathons every weekend. They don't need $1,000. A simple pair of running shoes that cost $200 that they'll think about you every time they put on those shoes. They'll say, wow, my boss actually cares. And I think there's a disalignment with a lot of things that happen within a large corporation. And it happens as you grow. My brother-in-law used to work at GE for 24 years. And he goes, man, guys are always pushing every quarter to hit the quota because that's what the CEO wanted. But then everybody else goes, who cares about your quota? Like, you don't care about us. But they're worried about their bonus or getting fired or so there's this misalignment. And I think the more you can get aligned on the whole direction of the company and align every layer of the company, the better you're going to be.
Yeah. And I love what you said earlier on when you interview employees. You kind of look them in the eye, you ask them, what are your goals? What's your why? What is it that you want to achieve? So it seems like inside of corporations, a lot of leaders are forgetting to do that, and they're trying to get their employees to work harder without the employee understanding why. And it actually reminds me of a time, so I used to work in a movie theater many, many years ago, and they used to have these contests where if you work behind the concession stand and you have guests that come up, every week they would run a contest. And if you could upsell your customers, whoever could upsell their customers the most would get a gift card for like $100. And so I still remember a guest would come in and I would say, for $1 more, you could upgrade to a large drink and a large popcorn. And whoever could get the most of those would win. But for me, all that was in it was like a $50 gift card. I didn't really understand obviously my leaders at the time, they would probably be getting bonuses. The theater would get more money. I had no insight, no clarity into any of that. But then I interviewed somebody at the San Diego Zoo, one of their chief human resource officers. And this was several years ago. And I told them this story and they're like, it's funny. We have a very similar program here, but at our company, we do it differently. And at the San Diego Zoo, what they did is that same contest, upsell, try to get customers to walk away with something. But the difference there is that they would tell their employees the extra money that you raise, here's how it's going to help the zoo for conservation efforts. Here are the animals that you're helping to avoid become extinct. Like you had insight into why it is that you were doing it and how it's impacting the business. And to me, that piece is missing in so many companies. Like, I don't know why I'm helping you meet the quarterly goal. I don't know what the purpose is for the business or for me. So is it just about having that conversation and just learning that?
I think so. And I think a lot of people, especially smaller businesses like mine, it's not a small business, but it's definitely not a corporation. It's not a big business. They're so afraid to share the numbers and explain the why. And if I was to pull out $1 and break it into quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies, and you explain where the money's going and you have open book management. See, a lot of the guys say they're going to think I'm rich. And you know what? The thing is I would tell most owners to have delayed gratification and reinvest into the business because that's their best asset. And they extract money because him and their wife or their wife and their husband say, we deserve this. We should buy the Harley. We should do this. We should do this. I had a guy that works with me spend the night last night. He's in town from Dallas. I think you do got to explain the why. And hopefully you got a greater cause than just stacking your pocketbook. Hopefully you're trying to influence and do things for everybody. I just had a gal that no longer works for us. And she didn't quit. And she sent me the longest, nicest passage about her life was better from knowing me and being part of this company. And I love this. You look at my Indeed and my Glassdoor, where the employees rate the CEO.
Yeah.
I usually win it every year because guess what? I care. And there's something called I give a shit. and I got that gene inside of me. And all I do is go back to your thing, and explaining the why is very, 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 very important, because most people don't understand. They think they're a cog on a wheel. And this has changed. This has changed in my mind. Like, you're only as strong as your weakest link. You need a powerful team. You got to have a good goalie, a good defense, good midfield, good forward. And you all work together to win. And we got to really, really lift everybody up. But that one negative, the victim mentality, it's easy for you to say, oh, yeah, you're his favorite. Like, those are all excuses.
Yeah.
And I don't embrace it. I just cannot. If you don't walk, every once in a while you walk in without a smile. But if you're toxic and you're always complaining, you're always rolling your eyes, you're late to meetings, I wouldn't say it around this like a military, but that just doesn't fly, because your attitude is affecting other people, and that's when I got to do something about it.
Yeah, and I like it because you have kind of you have a blend of compassion and caring with also a tough love approach. So you're kind of sitting in it, just like hearing you talk, which I think is a very healthy balance. But you also said that you care. How do you get, and this is something that a lot of employees frequently, like if I ever speak at an event, somebody will raise their hand and say, how do I get my leader to care about this? How do I get my leader to do this? How do you get leaders to care? Or is it one of those things where either they care or they don't, they're born with the caring gene or they're not? Is it possible to get somebody who doesn't care to then care?
Yeah, but it's not. It's very difficult, because human beings, typically we care most about ourselves or our families. And it's very hard to get the people to understand that the greater good. Zig Ziglar once said, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get everything you want. And, you got to have, if you have like, I think when you get to know people, and I think it's so important to break bread and get to know their families and understand they have important lives and understand they're going through stuff. And this happens by doing stuff outside of work. In fact, there's a study that's been done that most people won't leave their current job because they have best friends that work there. And if they don't not make best friends at work, usually that's outside of work. So taking them out to dinners, having bowling events. If you can't cook for your people say I don't have the money for that. Can you afford Bisquick and make pancakes? Because that's an excuse. You've got a lot of excuses. Like, we could all cook for our people. We could all do nice things. We could all go on a picnic. So once the families get to know each other, you start to really understand where they're coming from. You start to have a personal relationship, and things start to change. You don't look at them as like an employee. You look at them as a person. And that's when you have more empathy. And that's when things start to change. So I think getting people outside of this corporate structure where we got to get this done or we're going to get in trouble and we're not going to get our bonus, but doing things outside of work and getting to know the wife and the husband and the kids and the dogs, and just going on vacations and going to Mexico on the pinnacle trip.
What if there was a resource out there that could make you a better leader, that could teach you how to create an organizational culture where your employees are engaged, where you could go to figure out how to create a future-ready organization? Well, good news for you. I've put that together on my Substack, which you can find at greatleadership.substack.com. We have tens of thousands of members from around the world who every week are getting access to exclusive CEO interviews, leadership hacks and tips, in-depth guides and articles that I write where I share insights and strategies that I come up with and come across in my ongoing and regular work. So if you want to step up your leadership game, if you want to excel in your career, if you want to create a company where employees are engaged at work, and if you are interested in building a future-ready organization, then head over to greatleadership.substack.com. Yeah, it kind of blends, or maybe not blend. Yeah, I guess blends is a good word. The kind of the personal and the work side of things, which is interesting. And then maybe building on that, how do you deal with the fairness piece? Does that come up? Because a lot of them, I have two kids, for example. I have a 4-year-old and a soon-to-be 8-year-old. And my kids frequently, if one kid gets something that the other doesn't, or if one kid, whatever, something that the other doesn't, the conversation, oh, that's not fair. And, I'm a big believer of life's not fair. That's literally, my dad would always tell me that. And again, I have immigrant parents that came from the former USSR. Life was not fair to them at all. I mean, they grew up in a communist regime. They had the cards stacked against them, didn't speak any English. Life was not fair. So how do you reconcile with that? Because so many companies today, there's a big conversation around fairness. Treat your employees fairly, treat your employees equitably. Meanwhile, the reality, though, is that we live in a very unfair world where just because somebody else gets something doesn't mean that you will get it. And just, you know what I mean? So how do you balance those two things? And what do you do? Like, is that an acceptable message to give to your employees, that life is not fair?
I think so. And we live in the United States of America. There's 9 billion people on this planet. We feed the hungry children. We paint the YMCA. We plant trees. We volunteer. The whole company does all the time. When you know what other people been through, your life's not that bad. And a lot of Americans don't understand what it's like in other countries.
Oh, yeah.
And so you want to talk about fair? I think we need to be exposed to these things that are really out there. We actually have beds we could sleep in with a roof over our head. We have clean water. And without that, getting out there and doing those things, I think it's very tough to understand what fair is. But when it's performance pay versus hourly's for losers. Anybody that pays hourly says, and you know what? I think unions are for losers, because the one guy that's trying hard, they get beat up in the back alley because it's going to make everybody look bad. So I think unions existed for a reason. I don't need to go down this path. But the point is, unions do still serve a purpose. There are good unions, and I'm not saying all of them are bad. So I want to be very careful here. But I want to say with productivity, usually, and the government fails, they just spent $40 billion to give people internet. 0 people have internet after 3 years.
I remember reading that story.
Starlink could have done that for under $1 billion. They spent $7 billion to start charging stations that they told everybody in California to get an electric car. Now they want to tax it. And by the way, there were 7 charging stations built off those billions and billions of dollars.
California. And you didn't even talk about the high-speed rail that we've built, not very much of.
Well, the point is, I think about that whole scenario is a lot of people talk about fairness, and Ben Shapiro says your work is alienable unless you want to go get a talent. Everybody has the right to be self-employed in this country. America's a great country, but you got to take the risk, and without risk, there's no reward. And the real deal about it, in my opinion, is you're right. Life is not fair, but I'll tell you what. If I give you a path to get that, my job, Jacob, is to remove your excuses one time. Is say, Jacob, what would you need from me to make sure you succeed? And you give me all the things, and I say, Jacob, I'm going to make an agreement right here that says I'm going to grant you every wish. But after this, you're also going to make an agreement with me that you are going to succeed. We are going to do this together. There's going to be no more victimhood. And I wouldn't say victimhood. I'd say there's going to be nothing holding you back from success. Do we agree upon that if we remove these obstacles? Because I will be fair. Maybe you feel like you're not getting the good jobs. Maybe you feel like you didn't get to move up. So I'll say, everybody's got a score. I like to have a scorecard. When I was in school, we had a report card. I was raised getting scored. So it's not uncommon to be scored amongst your peers on a fair evaluation, because the numbers don't lie. You can't make up math. 2 + 2 = 4. So that's the way I look at those things.
Yeah, I like that approach, and I think having that having that conversation, I think, would be very productive for leaders to sit down with their employees and say, "Give me a list of all the things that you need to be successful at your job, and my role as your leader is to give you those things." And to have that open conversation and say, look, let's agree that if I give you those things, there's nothing standing in your way. And I don't think a lot of leaders have those conversations at all with their employees. They don't even know what their employees need to be successful. And I also like that you said there's a difference between kind of fairness versus I'm being fair. Like, I get the world is not fair, but I will treat you fairly. I'm going to treat you, if you work hard, I'm going to treat you the same way that I treat everybody else who works at this company, with the understanding that, yeah, life itself is not fair, and not every time when you put in the inputs, you're going to get the exact outputs that you want, but I'm going to do my best to treat you fairly. And I think that's also, a good message to give people. I guess this transitions well to the role of a leader. So a lot of people who listen to this are leaders in some capacity. What do you think, and especially you think about now and in the coming years, what is the role of a leader? Is it to be that person who removes those obstacles from the past of their employees?
I think so, and I think your job as a leader is to have a vision, and it's got to be a strong vision with a purpose behind it. And your job is to sell your vision. It's not to work harder than everybody, but to out-delegate everybody. And delegation is not dumping. There's a process. Here's what needs to get done. Here's why it needs to get done. There's got to be a why behind it. And I hated the leaders that I worked for that said, because I said so. And I want the people to understand the why. Here's what you have available to get it done. Here's when we're going to check in to make sure it's being done. Here's what you get if you get it done. And here's the deadline. And if you do it right, and then you have them sign their old fancy John Hancock, and then you sign it. And it is an agreement at that point, or a contract. And I don't like the word contract. I like agreement. It's a handshake. We're going to get this done together. We're going to have progress reports, because it's mostly project management. And if you're a great leader, you know how to get things done, but you know more on how to inspire people. You know how to make. Listen, I've answered calls. I've done inventory. I've worked in the warehouse. I've ran the calls. For 8 years, I ran the calls. So I think you're respected a lot more when you have empathy, because you've done everything. They've seen me take out the garbage. They see me today picking up the stuff in the parking lot. So one of the things are, if my desk is messy and I'm late to every meeting, you cannot hold, as a leader, you cannot expect people to do anything you're not willing to do. Like, why is your desk messy? Well, yours has been messy. And by the way, don't expect your kids not to drink when you drink every day. Don't expect your kids to eat perfect when you've been feeding them McDonald's their whole life. They watch you. They watch leaders. And you got to show up. You cannot lead from, the biggest thing is people are like, I didn't see my last boss. We were a $5 million company. You come in every day. You come visit us. You come ask us how we're doing. And like, people like to lead from afar and say, I'm the boss. I make the rules. I took the chances. But they never try to put themselves in the other person's shoes or have any empathy and say, hey, man, listen, I noticed something's going on. Are you okay? Instead of, I'm going to put you on a pip if things don't get better. Like, there's so many assholes. This is why I can never work in the corporate world.
So you see a lot of that stuff happening, and you hear those stories.
I see them and I hear them and I know it, and that's why it's so easy to get great talent, because they're so sick of it. They're sick of the tenure, and they've been here a long time, so they got moved up. The people that I attract, and it's amazing the people we attract, they're just sick of that, and they love the fact that they could come here. They don't need to be here for 10 years to move up. And we hire people and recruit people that want more for their lives. And if you stack the deck with the people, I don't go to the unemployment line for people. I don't go to Indeed, Glassdoor, and ZipRecruiter and all these other places. I tend to try to focus on people that already have a job but want more. And if I could give them a path for that, they're excited to come here and they're excited to earn it.
How do you inspire employees that are on I guess you could call it the ground floor, because, a lot of companies that come on the show, they are corporations. They have employees who are working in corporate, but a lot of the times they also have employees who are trash truck drivers, who are working in stores, in retail, who might be behind a concession stand. So it's one thing, I think, to inspire and motivate an employee who's sitting behind a desk, who's coming into kind of this beautiful corporate office every day. It's another thing where you have an employee who's out in the field, who's driving a truck, who's behind a concession stand. They oftentimes don't get that same sense of, the leadership connection, the training, the purpose in a lot of different ways. How do you inspire those employees who are constantly out in the field, who are not in that home base?
I think it's important to have a track record of, I've got a lot of people that started out as a junior technician making, 60 to 80 grand, which is still a lot of money. But they're now market managers in charge of a big group, 25 or more people. And I don't have one or two stories. I've got a lot of those stories. And everybody's got to start somewhere. The thing is, you go talk to that manager, you find out where they started, you make sure that story's told often and frequently, and you make sure to let people know that they started here. By the way, I'll show you where I started. Like, listen, if you're going to use that as a reason to not succeed, or guess what? If you kick ass, you try hard, you come in with a smile, you go above and beyond when nobody's looking, I promise you, I see you. And you have an ability to move up, I'll make you the new CEO. Like literally with the right work ethic, the right smile, and to show you care. Literally, like I don't even need the position of the CEO. I could move into a chairman of the board position. Like literally anybody's got the ability to have this. And if you don't have a good education and you need more, we'll invest in that. You want to be part of our book club, you can be part of that. There's no position, you do not need any particular position to be part of what we do or to go out with us. Or, you know, I don't have this fine line between managers and employees. Now there's a fine line between like dating, and there's certain things that you just shouldn't do because there could be a conflict of interest at that point. But, you know, I think it's really important to remind yourself that where you started and show people that people could come up in this company. And if you don't have a track record for that, the people are never going to believe it's possible. So we hire from within first.
Ah, interesting. Okay. So hiring from within first. And so what do you do for that inspiration piece? Is it constantly talking about the why? Is it going back to the purpose? Are you having conversations with those employees and who are out there servicing customers on a regular basis? Or where do they get their inspiration from? Because obviously, driving a truck, it's hot outside, then they got to be in somebody's garage. Do you get employees who just get disengaged or burned out or frustrated? And how do you kind of rekindle that inspiration?
So today we had our Bring the Fire meeting. It was 2 hours. I always get an inspirational speaker to come in. It was company-wide, so every state, every market tunes in. Every single department's on that call. Every single person in the company. And we go over, each department leads, and they explain what's going good, who they're going to recognize in other departments. And we bring up the scores of everything. There's a number and a badge and all the stuff, and it says these are the people we recognize that made our job easier. This is what really helps, is when you don't call in the same day because of capacity planning. Yeah. And they talk about opportunities, but every person gets acknowledged that's going above and beyond. And so they feel part of a team, and they understand why one department affects the other one. And like I said, your weakest link usually is the failure point. And without the calls being booked and dispatched correctly, and the trucks weren't running correctly, and having inventory that's correct from the warehouse, and all these other things, I'm rebuilding the org chart to put the technicians and installers up top, because they're the people that actually go out there in the hot and cold garages and collect the money and drive around all day. They don't have an office job, a cush job, sitting in the air conditioning. So I think it's important to remind the people that are working out there that your job is not the hardest job, because it's hard. It's 120 degrees today.
Yeah, that makes it tough. It's like in the mid 80s here in California, so 120. Yeah, that's a little toasty. So for the last few minutes that we have left, it's a section of the podcast I like to call the Leader's Toolkit, where we give listeners and viewers some actionable and practical advice that they can apply. And I thought it would be really interesting to talk about, and if there's something else you want to talk about, let me know. But how do you spot a winning employee? Like, as a leader, what are the qualities, the characteristics that you look for in an employee who has potential to get into a leadership or senior leadership role? And so what is your role as a leader in that capacity once you spot that employee? And then once you identify them, what do you do? Is there a checklist? Are there certain skills that you're paying attention to? And then how do you cultivate that employee to actually move into that role? And on top of that, one other piece is, do you believe in treating top performers better than kind of average or low performers? My conversation with Tommy Mello continues only for premium subscribers of Great Leadership Plus on Apple Podcasts. And in this bonus conversation, we're going to be talking about how leaders can spot a winning employee, and what do you do after you spot that winning employee? So Tommy's going to share what he looks for, what he pays attention to, and then what he does after he spots a winning employee. And he's also going to share a little bit about his routine. He really prioritizes taking care of himself, looking after and focusing on personal and professional development. So I asked him a little bit about his routine, what he does, how he does things. So he's going to share that as well. And if you want to get access to the transcript and the show notes, head over to greatleadership.substack.com. And you can also email me with any feedback, jacob@thefutureorganization.com. And if you enjoy this episode, please share it with somebody who you would like to see become a better leader as well. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.